Have you ever faced a situation that felt absolutely hopeless? A moment where everything you believed in was put to the test. Today, we're diving into the story of a man who faced exactly that. His name was Jairus, and his encounter with Jesus is one of the most moving and powerful stories in the entire Bible. It's a story about faith, desperation, and the incredible power of hope, even in the face of death. So, who was Jairus? The Bible tells us he wasn't just an ordinary person, he was a synagogue ruler. This was a position of great respect and authority in the Jewish community. He would have been a well-known, influential figure, responsible for the administration of the local synagogue and its worship services. Think of him as a community leader, a man people looked up to. He was likely devout, knowledgeable in the scriptures, and deeply invested in the religious life of his town, which was probably Capernaum, a place where Jesus performed many miracles. But despite his status and influence, Jairus was, at his core, a father, and his heart was breaking. His only daughter, just 12 years old, was dying. Imagine the anguish. All his social standing, all his knowledge, all his connections, none of it could save her. In his moment of ultimate desperation, this respected religious leader does something remarkable, something that would have shocked his peers. He seeks out Jesus. Now, you have to understand the context. At this point, Jesus was a controversial figure. While many were drawn to his teachings and miracles, the religious establishment was growing increasingly skeptical and hostile. For a synagogue ruler like Jairus to publicly approach Jesus was a huge risk. He was essentially jeopardizing his reputation, his career, and his social standing. But his love for his daughter outweighed any fear of what others might think. The Bible, in the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, describes the scene vividly. Jairus finds Jesus surrounded by a massive crowd. He doesn't hesitate. He falls at Jesus' feet, a profound act of humility and submission, and begs him, pleading with him to come to his house and heal his daughter. He says, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be made well and live." You can hear the raw desperation in his words. This isn't a man making a polite request. It's a father crying out for a miracle. Jesus agrees to go with him, but the journey is not a simple one. The crowd is thick, pressing in on them from all sides. And then, something happens that adds an agonizing delay to their urgent mission. A woman who had been suffering from a bleeding issue for 12 long years, the same number of years Jairus' daughter had been alive, reaches out in faith and touches the hem of Jesus' garment. Instantly, she is healed. Jesus stops. He feels power go out from him and asks, "Who touched me?" The disciples are bewildered. "You see the crowd pressing around you," they say, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus knows something significant has happened. The woman, trembling, comes forward and confesses what she has done and how she was healed. Can you imagine what Jairus must have been feeling during this delay? Every second was precious. His daughter was on the verge of death, and here they were, stopped in the middle of a crowd. The anxiety, the frustration, the fear must have been overwhelming. He's probably thinking, "Please, Jesus, we have to hurry. We're losing time." This interruption serves as a powerful test of his patience and his faith. And then, the worst possible news arrives. While Jesus is still speaking to the woman, messengers come from Jairus' house. Their words are like a dagger to his heart. "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? It's over." The finality of that statement is crushing. The flicker of hope he had is extinguished. Imagine the despair washing over him. He had taken a risk, humbled himself, and now it was all for nothing. He was too late. This is the moment where most stories would end in tragedy. But this is where the story truly begins. Jesus overhears the message. He turns to the shattered father, looks him in the eye, and says 5 of the most powerful words in Scripture. Do not be afraid. Only believe. Think about that. In the face of undeniable, irreversible fact death itself, Jesus commands him not to fear, but to believe. Yes, asking Jairus to trust him beyond what his eyes can see and what his ears have heard. He's asking him to hold on to faith even when all hope seems lost. This is the critical turning point for Jairus. He has a choice: give in to despair or cling to the words of Jesus. Jairus makes his choice. He continues on with Jesus. When they arrive at his house, the scene is exactly what you'd expect. It's filled with chaos and grief. Professional mourners are wailing and making a loud commotion, as was the custom. The air is thick with the sorrow of death. Jesus looks at the chaotic scene and says something that sounds utterly absurd to everyone there. Why all this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep. The mourners, who had just seen the lifeless body of the girl, do what many of us might do. They laugh at him. They mock him. They know death when they see it. How could this man be so out of touch with reality? Their laughter reveals their lack of faith. They see only the physical reality, the end of a life. Jesus, however, sees things from a divine perspective. For him, death is not the final word. So, he puts them all out of the house. He doesn't need their skepticism or their doubt. He takes with him only the girl's father and mother, and his inner circle of disciples Peter, James, and John. They entered the room where the little girl is lying. The mood shifts from the loud chaos outside to a quiet, sacred stillness. Jesus takes the girl by the hand. He looks at her and speaks to her in Aramaic, her native tongue, with gentle authority. He says, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, arise. And then, the impossible happens. The 12-year-old girl, who was dead just moments before, immediately sits up and starts to walk around. Life has returned to her body. The Gospels tell us that everyone present was completely astonished. That's an understatement. They had just witnessed a resurrection. They had seen death itself bow to the command of Jesus. The first thing Jesus does next is so practical and so tender. He tells her parents to give her something to eat. It's a beautiful, human touch that shows his care for her complete well-being, not just the miraculous part. He's bringing her fully back to life, in every sense. He also instructs them not to tell anyone what had happened, likely to manage the crowds and focus on his ultimate mission, which was not just about physical miracles. So, what can we take away from the story of Jairus? It's a profound lesson in faith. Jairus shows us that it's okay to be desperate. It's okay to be at the end of your rope. In fact, it is often in those moments of helplessness that we are most open to seeking help from a higher power. His story reminds us that no problem is too big, and no situation is too hopeless for God. It also teaches us about perseverance, even when faced with delays and devastating news. Jairus kept his focus on Jesus. When the world told him it was over, he chose to listen to a different voice, a voice that said, only believe. And finally, it reveals the heart of Jesus. He is compassionate, willing to stop for the one in the crowd. A is powerful, with authority even over death, and he is personal, speaking words of comfort and life directly to our deepest fears. The story of Jairus isn't just about a miracle that happened 2,000 years ago. It's an invitation for us today, an invitation to bring our own impossible situations to Jesus, to trust him through the delays and the bad news, and to believe that with him, there is always hope. Thank you so much for joining me today to explore this incredible story. If this touched you, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear a message of hope. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the powerful stories of the Bible. I'll see you in the next video.